We start with the G20 Summit today because all eyes will be on the crucial summit this week. Several world leaders will gather and discuss key issues on the global economy. But the meet in New Delhi is not aloof from its challenges. It will be a test for New Delhi as a delegate game of diplomacy plays out. Well, ahead of the summit, the UK-India trade deal seems to be in jeopardy. This is the road ahead for the much anticipated deal is still not quite clear. Well, a report by the UK-based media outlet The Guardian reveals that the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has ruled out a quick fix trade deal with India. This means a deal before the leaders' summit is not possible. In fact, it is believed that a deal will only be reached in 2024 after both the nations go to the polls. Now, things aren't well when it comes to India-Canada trade ties as well. So, in a very unexpected move, Canada has announced a pause on trade talks with India. And this too just ahead of the G20 Summit, which the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, will be attending. Just 3 months ago, both nations agreed to seal an initial agreement this year. However, no explanation has been given by the Canadian side of why the decision to halt the talks has been taken. Meanwhile, political indifferences also loom over the summit. After all the ministerial meetings that have taken place this year in India, no joint statements have been issued by the nations. The reason being that the differences over the war in Ukraine will take centre stage. Due to polarised views over the issue, no common language has been decided on this. And as we get these updates, the fourth and final meeting of the G20 Summit is underway in the North Indian state of Haryana. It remains to be seen if there will be a joint declaration this time, but that's what everyone will be watching for, a joint decision on what's to be done over the situation in Ukraine. Now, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who will be attending the nation in the G20 summit, he has categorically said that he will block the summit's final declaration if it does not reflect Russia's stand on Ukraine. Well, last year, Russia agreed to certain texts regarding the Ukraine conflict in the declaration, and this was at the Bali G20 summit. However, though, it withdrew from this year. Okay, and lastly, there's the question over whether the Chinese President Xi Jinping will attend the summit at all, or will he not, and therefore undermine the whole thing? Now, China has confirmed that Xi Jinping will not attend, so we're not expecting him to attend anyway, but the Premier Li Qiang will be there instead, so there will be a representative. Beijing has not given any reason, though, behind this particular decision.
At the invitation of the Government of Republic of India, State Council Premier Li Qiang will attend the 18th Summit of the Leaders of the Group of 20 in New Delhi, India from September 9th to 10th.
Well, to talk about what to expect from the summit and plenty on the table for discussion, we've got the correspondent Ollie Barrett joining us live from London. So already there seems to be some sort of conflicts. We know Xi Jinping will not be attending. What else can we expect to be top of the agenda other than Ukraine, of course, which will no doubtably take centre stage?
Yeah, certainly the issue of Ukraine is going to lead to a lot of divisions behind the scenes. India will clearly be hoping that it can reach agreements in other issues and make progress on a series of other issues between the G20 nations. But clearly the issue of Ukraine is going to take a lot of the headlines. We heard US President Joe Biden describing himself as disappointed that the Chinese President Xi Jinping may not be in attendance. Of course, Russian President Vladimir Putin won't be attending in person either. India is certainly stressing that it's not completely unprecedented for some of the leaders of the G20 countries not to attend these summits in person. From a UK perspective, you mentioned that issue around around UK-India trade, and certainly from the UK side there had been a hope, I think, in and around Downing Street that perhaps a trade deal with India could have been reached before the summit, or indeed could even have been announced while UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was in India, but that now looking very unlikely indeed, according to all of the briefings that we're getting from UK officials here in London.
Which will be extremely disappointing for Rishi Sunak, because he's relying on something tangible to come out of this, to come home and almost boast about and prove that the Tories can make these huge international trade deals after the disappointment with the US one not coming to fruition.
Yeah, one of the issues we understand is that there are areas that the UK and India actually do have agreement on, essentially issues around, for example, removing tariffs on things like British whiskey heading towards the Indian market, for example. But what we understand is that while India might be ready to do a quick fix or a temporary deal on some of these limited areas, what the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his administration want to find is an overarching trade deal, and that clearly isn't ready yet. The two sides haven't reached agreement on many issues, and we know that there has been some hold up from the UK side on things like visas and opening up work permits for Indian workers into the UK economy. That is something that is very controversial domestically here in the UK when it comes to issues around immigration. So that is potentially one of the things holding the broader trade deal up. I think what the UK side is worried about is that if you do some kind of limited quick fix trade deal, then what actually might happen is that you never end up reaching the broad overarching trade deal that they see as the ultimate prize. So for now, certainly there doesn't seem to be much prospect of that trade deal being reached, and that is, as you say, politically difficult for a Prime Minister who wants to point to things like that as a success that can be reached post-Brexit for the UK. But certainly we understand that the UK side is holding things up at the moment, not wanting to go ahead with that quick fix trade deal, although we should say that another round of talks between the UK and India is getting underway this week, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility that some kind of progress could be pointed to ahead of that G20 summit this weekend.
Okay, so still some hope there for some form of a trade deal potentially. And as you rightly point out, in these post-Brexit times, more important than ever before to get these global trade deals. Okay, thank you so much. That's Ollie Barrett there joining us live from London, talking about the key issues to be on the table for the G20 leaders this week. We've got that UK-India trade deal potentially coming to fruition, and of course, Ukraine taking centre stage as well. Thank you.